I used to call my husband a mama's boy, soft, spineless, too nice for his own good. I thought love meant pushing him to man up and pay off our mess. The credit cards, the overdue bills, even my mother's furnace repair. One night, I humiliated him in front of our friends, and he just stood up and left. No yelling, no drama, just silence. But what I didn't know was that he had been fixing everything, in ways I never saw, and for people I never thanked. The man I dismissed as weak had been holding together more than just our finances. He was holding together me, and by the time I realized it, he was gone. My name is Jessica. I'm 30 years old, and I suppose this is the closest thing I'll ever get to a confession. It's been months now since everything shattered, and the pieces still feel sharp beneath my feet. It started, or maybe it just culminated, at our friends Mark and Sarah's house. Saturday night, same routine. Drinks, takeout, loud music, louder opinions about sports or politics or whatever reality show was trending. We did this often. It was our normal. But Chad wasn't normal that night. He's never been the life of the party. More the quiet observer with a dry wit that could cut you off at the knees if you weren't paying attention. That night, though, he was silent. Not observant quiet, but absent quiet. He nursed a single beer for an hour, staring into the amber liquid like it held the answers to the universe. His shoulders slumped with a weariness that seemed out of place amidst the laughter. It bothered me, maybe more than it should have. Here we were, supposed to be relaxing, letting off steam. We had kids, bills breathing down our necks, the constant low-grade hum of stress that comes with adult life. I felt like I was juggling it all. The school runs, the meal planning, the endless budgeting gymnastics, trying to keep our little world from spinning off its axis. And he was just sitting there, moping. What right did he have to check out when I was working so hard to keep us afloat, to keep things fun? I tried subtle cues first. A pointed glance, a light touch on his arm, a forced laugh directed his way. Nothing. He remained adrift in his own private gloom. The more he withdrew, the more irritated I became. It felt like he was deliberately spoiling the mood, like his silence was a judgment on all of us, on me. My frustration simmered, bubbling beneath the forced smiles and casual conversation. And then it happened. I don't even remember the exact context, just the rising tide of annoyance cresting inside me. Someone made a joke, Chad didn't react, and the words just tumbled out of my mouth, sharp and ugly. Man up, Chad. Seriously. The instant I said it, I knew it was wrong. Maybe I meant it as a rough jest, a clumsy attempt to jolt him back into the room, but honesty forces me to admit there was a core of genuine frustration, even contempt behind it. I wanted him to snap out of it, to be the strong, unflappable guy I thought a husband should be, the kind you see on TV who handles everything with a wry grin. A wave of uncomfortable laughter rippled through our friends, the kind that happens when someone crosses a line. But Chad didn't laugh. He didn't even flinch. He just froze, his gaze lifting slowly from his beer to meet mine. The look in his eyes wasn't anger, not exactly. It was something worse. It was a look of profound hurt, disbelief, like I'd physically struck him in front of everyone. In that split second, the playful atmosphere evaporated. The background chatter seemed to fade, and all I could hear was the frantic thumping of my own heart. He held my gaze for a long moment, long enough for the shame to start prickling at the back of my neck, though I fought it down. Then he looked away, breaking the connection. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. He didn't argue, didn't defend himself, didn't say a single word. He simply placed his half-finished beer carefully on the coffee table, stood up, and walked towards the door. "Chad?" Sarah called out tentatively, but he didn't turn around. He just opened the door and stepped out into the night, closing it gently, decisively, behind him. The click echoed in the sudden, awful stillness. I stood there, stunned, a nervous laugh dying in my throat. What the hell had just happened? Couldn't he take a joke? It wasn't that big of a deal, was it? We'd weathered worse storms. But the hollowness in the room, the way our friends suddenly avoided my eyes, told me this was different. This felt like a fracture, deep and irreparable. And I had been the one holding the hammer. I stayed another hour at the party, laughing too loudly, sipping wine I didn't even want, pretending the air didn't feel like glass. Everyone else kept chatting, but something had shifted. No one looked me directly in the eye. It was like I'd committed a crime and the witnesses didn't know whether to acknowledge it or look away. On the drive home, my hands wouldn't stop gripping the wheel. I kept imagining him already on the couch, sulking maybe, waiting for me to make the first move. I was ready to argue, maybe even apologize, depending on his mood. But the house was dark. And quiet. Too quiet. No light under the bedroom door, no sound of the TV humming low in the living room, Just the ticking clock in the hallway and that hollow feeling in my chest I couldn't name yet. He didn't come home that night, or the next. When he finally called on the third day, I answered so fast I nearly dropped the phone. "Hey," I breathed, trying not to sound panicked. "I need some space, Jessica." His voice was flat, not angry, just blank. Like he was reading a weather report. "Space? From what, Chad? From a stupid comment? Grow up." The words came out sharp and defensive before I could stop them. The same tired script I always used when I felt cornered. Make him the dramatic one. Make me the reasonable one. There was a long pause on the line. Then I heard it, a sigh so deep it carried years. Years of things unsaid, patched over, swallowed. "It wasn't just the comment, Jess. You know it wasn't." I opened my mouth to argue, but did I? Deep down, did I? At the time, I clung to the idea that it was about what I said in front of our friends, that he was just embarrassed, oversensitive, that he'd get over it. But in the quiet that followed, even I knew that was a lie I'd told myself for too long. The truth? I'd been slowly chipping away at him for years. Money was always our silent battleground. I wasn't reckless on purpose, not really. I just had this blind optimism when it came to spending. I'd swipe the card for new curtains, a toy the kids didn't need, a spontaneous online order I forgot to mention. He'd find out when the statements came, and he never yelled, not once. He just absorbed it. Quietly rearranged the budget, picked up an extra freelance gig, moved things around like he was playing financial Jenga while I kept pulling blocks without warning. I thought that's just what he did. He was the provider, the fixer. I never stopped to notice how tired he looked after each oops. How his shoulders sagged a little more every time I promised I'd do better, and didn't. His request for space turned into him staying at his sister Lauren's place. I told myself it was temporary, dramatic, that he just needed to cool off. The following weekend, our son had a soccer game. Chad never missed their games. Rain, flu, work. He always showed up, pacing the sidelines, cheering too loudly. It was a running joke between us. That Saturday, his usual spot was empty. I kept glancing at the gate, willing him to walk in. But he never came, and the realization hit me like a gut punch. This wasn't just about space. This was different. This was real. Even then, I kept resisting the idea that I was the problem, that he'd finally had enough. My pride fed me lines like, "He's just being dramatic," or, "If he can't handle a little push, then maybe he's not as strong as I thought." It was easier to be indignant than to admit I'd hurt him. Easier to frame him as weak than to accept I'd made him feel that way. He didn't fight with me. That was the worst part. He just left. In the weeks that followed, we exchanged only the bare minimum. Updates about the kids, logistics. His voice on the other end of the line was always polite, calm, unreadable, like a customer service rep who knew the call was being recorded. And the house? It felt like an empty hotel lobby. Big, silent, no trace of warmth left behind. I kept expecting him to walk back in like nothing had happened. To say something like, "Okay, that was dumb. Let's just fix this." But the longer he stayed gone, the more I realized he wasn't planning to fix it this time. The school's fall festival came about a month after that night. I signed up to help with the bake sale. It felt like the right kind of distraction. Smile for the other parents, keep moving, pretend. I set up the folding table with foil-wrapped brownies and pre-cut Rice Krispie treats, forcing polite laughter with the PTA moms. My kids were off somewhere, chasing friends with sticky fingers and flushed cheeks. And then I saw her, Lauren, Chad's sister. She was walking straight toward me, clutching a paper coffee cup, her brows drawn low. There was no small talk in her posture. Lauren was sharp, always had been. A social worker by trade, widowed young, tough as nails, but never cruel. We'd never been especially close, but there'd always been mutual respect. Now? Her expression made my stomach twist. She stopped right in front of the table, her gaze cool but steady. "Jessica," she said flatly. I gave her a quick smile, hoping to diffuse whatever tension she was bringing. "Hey, want a brownie? They're not half bad this year." She didn't blink. "We need to talk." My throat tightened. "Is Chad okay?" "He's surviving," she said. "No thanks to you." My hands froze above the napkins. I glanced around. Too many people. Too much sugar and noise and cheerful denial. What's that supposed to mean? She took a sip of her coffee and leaned in, her voice low but razor sharp. "It means you don't get to walk around here pretending nothing happened. He's broken, Jessica. And you did it. Not with one comment. With years of taking and pushing and pretending it was love. Her words cut deeper than I expected, but I wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. Lauren, I think we should talk somewhere else. No, she interrupted, still calm. I've watched you treat him like a punching bag wrapped in husband skin for too long, and he just kept loving you through it. But he's done now, and I don't blame him. She straightened up. He deserved someone who saw him. You didn't. You only saw what he could carry. Then she walked away, leaving me standing behind a table of cookies I hadn't baked, wearing a smile that wasn't real, in a life I'd been pretending was still whole. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. I felt afraid. She walked right up to the table, her expression unreadable. Other parents milled around, chatting, buying cookies. Jessica, she said, her voice low but carrying an intensity that made me straighten up. Lauren, hi, I replied, trying to keep my tone light. Can I get you a brownie? They're actually pretty good this year. She ignored the pleasantries. I need to talk to you. Her eyes scanned the nearby parents, then settled back on me, hard. Not here, maybe, but soon. Is everything okay? I asked, my stomach tightening. Is Chad all right? A humorless smile touched her lips. Chad's surviving. No thanks to you. The words hit me like cold water. What's that supposed to mean? I glanced around, hoping no one was listening too closely. Lauren leaned in slightly, her voice dropping further but losing none of its steel. It means you need to stop pretending this is about one stupid comment at a party. You've been chipping away at him for years, Jessica, making him feel small, taking everything he does for granted, running him ragged financially and emotionally. He gives, and you just take and criticize. My face flushed hot. That's not fair, I stammered, acutely aware of Mrs. Gable pretending to examine a cupcake display nearby. We have issues like any couple, but I don't— You don't what? Lauren interrupted, her gaze unwavering. You don't realize how much you hurt him? Or you don't care? He's a good man, Jessica, a kind, decent man who has put up with far more than he should have because he loved you, loved the kids. But everyone has a breaking point, and you pushed him right past his. She paused, letting the words hang in the air between us. He deserves better than this. He deserves someone who sees him, who respects him, not someone who tells him to man up when he's clearly drowning. Her words, delivered with such quiet conviction in that public space, stripped away my carefully constructed defenses. I felt exposed, judged, and horrifyingly, I knew she was right. Not entirely, maybe. My pride still fought back, but there was a core of truth I couldn't deny. I had been careless with his heart, with his efforts. I had taken his quiet strength for granted, mistaking it for weakness. She held my gaze for another moment, then straightened up. Just think about it, she said softly, before turning and walking away, leaving me standing there amidst the cheerful chaos of the bake sale, feeling utterly, devastatingly ashamed. Lauren's words refused to fade, looping like a broken song, chipping away at him for years. I'd always chalked my sarcasm up to just joking, but every half-smile I'd seen on Chad's face now replayed as a wince I'd ignored. One rainy Thursday my mom dropped by, cardigan sleeves pushed to her elbows, grocery bag swinging from her wrist. I was pacing the kitchen, bills spread across the counter like crime scene photos. I don't even know which one to pay first. Frustration cracked in my voice. Chad was the numbers guy. Mom set the bag down. He helped with more than your bills, honey. My shoulders tensed. How so? Her spoon traced slow circles in her tea. Since the furnace fiasco, he's been slipping a little money into my account. Said he didn't want you worrying. The words landed like a slap. He what? Every month, she whispered, almost apologetic. I promised I wouldn't tell, but you need to know the kind of man he is. Heat flushed my cheeks. Humiliation, not anger. Chad covering my mother while I berated him for checking out. I pressed a hand to the counter, steadying myself. Mom reached over, gentle. Jessica, sometimes we don't see the good right in front of us until it's packing boxes. I swallowed, voice small. Why didn't he say anything? He wasn't doing it for praise. She squeezed my fingers. He did it because he loves you. Or loved, she corrected softly. Those words cut deeper than Lauren's because there was no anger in them, only sorrow. After Mom left, silence filled the house like water in a sinking boat. I called Chad again, voicemail. My message cracked halfway through. I get it now, I whispered. Please, just call when you can. Nothing. I sent an email next, paragraphs of apologies and promises. No response. He wasn't being cruel. He was finished. 3 months after he walked out, I dragged dusty boxes from the closet, telling myself I was decluttering, but really I was hunting for traces of a life that felt borrowed from someone else. Under a stack of Polaroids, our first beach trip, his hand on my waist, my grin so wide it looked painful, I spotted a folded sheet of notebook paper with a familiar looping script. My pulse skittered. Don't dramatize, I told myself, though my fingers trembled unfolding it. Jess, I still remember the night we stayed up until sunrise arguing about which star was actually Mars. You laughed at how serious I got. I loved that laugh. Lately, I only hear it when it's aimed at me. I fix the leaks, pay the overdrafts, swallow the jokes, and tell myself love means staying calm. But calm is turning into quiet, and quiet is turning into empty. If you're reading this, I probably didn't have the guts to say it out loud. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because you never learned to love without hurting. Maybe distance will teach us both something. C. The note blurred. Tears hit the page like raindrops on a windshield. I slid to the floor, photos spilling around me. This is my doing. The thought throbbed with every heartbeat. Footsteps padded down the hall, our daughter, Emma, clutching a half-dressed Barbie. She paused, taking in the mess. Mom, are you okay? I wiped my cheeks. Just organizing. She knelt, picked up a photo of Chad giving her piggyback rides. I miss Daddy's pancakes. Yours taste burnt. A weak laugh escaped me. Mine are burnt. Will he come home when you finish organizing? My throat tightened. I don't know, sweetheart, but he'll always come for you. She studied me, 6-year-old honesty sharp as glass. You should say sorry better. Better. Not just louder, not just longer. Better. That night I sat at the kitchen table, pen hovering over a blank sheet. No defensiveness, no rationalizing, just the truth. I chose sarcasm over kindness. I chose ease over partnership. I saw your silence as weakness instead of warning. The letter ran 4 pages. I didn't beg him back. I released him to the peace he'd earned. When I sealed the envelope, a strange calm settled, like cleaning a wound at last. Outside, wind rattled the windows. I carried the old photo box to the fire pit in the yard. I couldn't burn everything. Memories were still the kid's birthright, but the note deserved a ritual. Flames licked the edges. For a second, the words glowed. Love without hurting. Ash swirled up, disappeared into the night. I whispered to the dark, I'm learning even if it's too late. The wind didn't answer, but the heavy cloak of shame felt a fraction lighter. Liberation, it turns out, sometimes begins with admitting you were the villain of your own love story, and deciding that's not who you're going to be tomorrow. My hands trembled as I unfolded the note, the creases soft and worn like something touched too many times and never spoken of. His handwriting looked exactly the same, precise, patient, like him. I didn't know what I expected, maybe something angry or cold, a final jab, but it wasn't that at all. Jess, I sit here sometimes and wonder where we went off course. I remember the beginning. I remember thinking you were the most vibrant, exciting person I'd ever met. You made life feel bright, but somewhere along the way, the brightness started to scorch. The energy became chaos. The confidence turned into carelessness. I stopped breathing. He'd written this before he left. Months ago, maybe longer. A letter never sent, or maybe meant to be found just like this. Too late. I read on. I keep trying to hold us together, keep things stable, but it feels like I'm patching holes in a sinking ship while you're drilling new ones, laughing about the leaks. You say you love me, and maybe you do, in your way, but it's a love that demands, that takes, that criticizes more than it cherishes. It's a love that wounds. I clutched the edges of the page like it might dissolve in my hands. Every word felt like a mirror shoved in my face. And then the final blow. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because you never learned to love without hurting. Something inside me cracked open. I didn't cry right away. At first I just sat there, silent, stunned. The note slipped from my fingers and landed on top of an old photo. The two of us at the beach, barefoot in the sand, his arm around me like he was anchoring me to the world. That man had loved me, and I'd worn that love down until there was nothing left but silence. I sank to the floor, knees hitting hardwood, arms wrapping tight around my chest like I could hold myself together through sheer force. It wasn't that I hadn't loved him back. I had. But my love came with sharp edges, impatience, defensiveness, pride. I thought loving someone meant showing up, staying in the house, doing the routine, but I hadn't seen him. I hadn't made him feel safe. And in the end, love that doesn't feel safe isn't love that lasts. The door creaked behind me. Tiny feet padded in. Emma stood there, clutching her blanket, blinking sleepily. "Why are you sitting on the floor?" she asked. I swiped my sleeve across my face. "I'm just thinking." She came closer, looking down at the scattered photos and the note. "Is that from Daddy?" I nodded. "Yeah, kind of." She crouched beside me, fingers brushing a picture of him lifting her onto his shoulders. "He looks happy here." "He was," I whispered. "For a while." She looked up. "Do you miss him?" More than I could ever explain. "Every day," I said. "Every version of him." She leaned against me, small and warm, and somehow heavier than she'd ever felt. "You should tell him." "I think he already knows." But even as I said it, I wondered, what if he doesn't? What if this note was the last thing he hoped I'd find because he didn't have the strength to say it out loud? What if I had never even asked him what he needed? Not once. I closed my eyes. The silence in the house wasn't just quiet anymore. It was a consequence, and I was living inside it. This wasn't about a single comment at a party. This was about years of little cuts. And now, finally, the bleeding had stopped, but only because he walked away. I looked at the page again, that last line burning into my memory. "I left because you never learned to love without hurting. No drama, no accusations, just truth." And it shattered me more than any screaming match ever could. That note was the final punctuation mark on our story. There was no ambiguity left, no room for self-deception. He hadn't left in a fit of pique over a single comment. He hadn't left because he was weak or unwilling to work things out. He'd left because I had, piece by piece, dismantled his trust, his sense of self-worth, and his hope for a partnership built on mutual respect. He left because staying meant letting himself be diminished, day after day. It's been almost a year now. Chad and I co-parent, politely, distantly. He's rebuilding his life. Sometimes I see a flicker of the old Chad in his interactions with the kids, but never with me. Towards me, there's a guarded courtesy, nothing more. The warmth is gone, extinguished by years of careless neglect. I'm learning to manage my finances, to be responsible, to think before I speak. I'm trying to be the person he needed me to be, the person I should have been all along. But it's too late for us. The damage is done. There's no going back, no fixing what I broke so thoroughly. Lauren was right. My mother's quiet revelation was right, and Chad's heartbreaking note was the truest thing of all. I didn't know how to love him without hurting him. And now I live with the silence, the emptiness, the crushing weight of knowing I had a good man, a good love, and I threw it away through my own blindness and selfishness. This is the legacy of my carelessness. This is my confession, and this is my regret, sharp and unending.